Well, there is something that comes around every 4 years, and it fills the media. We become inundated with it. Presidential election year, the presidential campaign at conventions, all of the spin and the hype and the maneuvering and the sparring of an election year. And all of those messages that start coming onto your answering machine. And yes, the bulk mail too. All those things. But I am grateful. I am thankful that I get to participate in election. That I live in a country where that process, as unpleasant as it sometimes can be, and as flawed as it is, it's here. And we are part of it. And so I'm thankful for that. And the kind of this atmosphere got me looking in a different way as Jesus travels today. And he's going from village to village. He's campaigning. He really is. And he's campaigning for the kingdom of God, for the rule of God. And as he goes campaigning from place to place, he stops and he says to his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" He wants feedback. Let's have a poll. What's being said? How are people interpreting what's happening out here? And so they tell him. Some think you're Elijah. Some think you are John the Baptist returned. Some think you're one of the prophets. And that shows a very, very high expectation among the people. Because there was this expectation that before God intervened with the Messiah, sending the chosen anointed one, that a great prophet would arise. So there's this climate. People are seeing something big, something powerful. They're waiting to see what's going to happen, what's going to come. And so Jesus takes that in. But in a way, he kind of sets it aside and he says, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter steps forward and says, "You are the Messiah. You're not a forerunner. You are the main event. You are God's candidate. You are the anointed one with the power and blessing of God to come and move into our world and to restore Israel." Now, I know Peter didn't say all that in the passage, but that was the expectation. Messiah would redeem the nation, restore things, and fulfill promises. And Jesus immediately, and it says sternly, says, "Let's not make that public just yet." Let's not throw that gas on the fire right now. Because he needs to teach them about Messiah. So he begins to teach them the Son of Man. And he uses that word for himself frequently. And it's from the book of Daniel, which refers to one like a son of man who comes from the heavens. He says the Son of Man must suffer, be rejected by the chief priests and elders and scribes, by the political power, and be killed. And after 3 days, be raised. And then Peter kind of grabs him and takes him aside. No. The campaign advisor, right? Wrong spin, Lord. It doesn't say what Peter said. It just says he rebuked him. And the other Gospels will just say very briefly, he said, "God forbid, this should not happen to you." Just no. This is not how you conduct a campaign. You don't stand up and say, "I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to be killed." And so Jesus, as Peter rebukes him, you heard, he just turns right around and rebukes Peter. Get behind me, Satan. You're my opponent when you talk this way. You're opposing me. You have your mind not on divine things. Your mindset is not with God. Your mind is on human things. You're thinking like a human being who's running a political campaign. I'm coming from a completely different place, Peter. And then he turns not just from Peter to the disciples, but then it says to the whole, everybody that was there. He wants everybody to hear this now. I have to teach you something. And he's going to teach them about his mindset, about a mind that is on divine things, not human methods. Because we know what human beings do politically. They accumulate power and influence, and they build blocks, and they figure out how to manipulate information and get themselves in power so that they can do what they want to do. Hopefully, what they want to do will be helpful. Might not be. But we know how the human process of campaigning and accumulating power and that mindset, we know how that works. We see it every 4 years and in between. So Jesus says, no. You have to follow me. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. Great campaign speech, huh? Don't be ashamed of me and my words. Don't be ashamed of this way and this mindset. Follow me. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. And someone gave us great help in understanding this. It was St. Paul. He describes the mind of Christ, the mindset of Christ. He says, though he was in the form of God, he did not grasp his divinity. He did not insist or remain protected and empowered within his divine right and being and glory, but he emptied himself and opened himself to become a servant, obedient even unto death. He did not grasp his divine being, but he emptied himself. And he took the form of a servant. And we have the cross, the mindset of the cross. And so he says to us, you must deny yourself. You must leave that mindset that is about grasping and having what you want and you need, and a life that's built around you and your thoughts and your plans and your hopes and your ambitions. Empty yourself, deny yourself, and become one who serves. And to help us understand that, he says, don't be ashamed of me and my words, because that is what brings us into this mindset that shapes us as a cross. Let Christ, his word, his mindset permeate us. Don't be ashamed of what he teaches and says. Don't turn away. Don't disown all those hard and challenging things. But let him have the authorship of our lives. Let him write my story, your story. Let him shape us in the form of a servant. In our homes, where we work, where we live, we deny ourselves that we might not be ashamed of him. We open ourselves to another mentality, He says, let me be your shepherd. Let me have custody of your life, of your thoughts, of your plans, of your hopes. Put it with me. Do not be ashamed of me and my words. And when we walk with him, when we follow him in this, we empty ourselves more and more. We get more and more able to do that. We empty ourselves to take the form of a servant. See, we don't have to look for our cross. There's crosses everywhere. Once we open our arms, once we open our hearts to the world around us and to the pain around us and the struggle of people around us, we are a cross. We're cross bearers. We become a cross. We open our hearts with God's heart. Do not be ashamed of me and my words. And Lord, we say thanks be to God.